Hi. Today's episode is, I'm a little bit nervous for it because it's talking about some OC content that's not Warrior Cats. It's just this high fantasy story that I've been putting together, and I'm a little bit nervous to talk about it because nothing's like completely set in stone about it, so I don't want to start going into it and then to be like, oh yeah, I'm changing all of this. But I just want to have a little bit of fun with something I think is not subject to change. Um, Also, real quick, the video skips at points. I was really trying to use OBS, but it's not working for some reason, so I switched back to a different screen recorder, and it's a whole thing. It halfway through it should be fine, right? So today we have um he's an elven king named Thoimion Mistwing. He is one of the six kings that start. So in this universe, uh, it's been around for like almost 6,500 years. It's not super long history. There's only two ages so far, and Thalman was not around for a really long time. In fact, he only was in his late 50s, maybe even 60 years old, not quite sure. He was not around for a long time. But when the gods created this world, he was one of the six elves that was given a kingdom, and he got the kingdom of Thorntangle, I believe. I think that's his kingdom. I haven't quite decided. That's subject to change. I'm not sure. But he was a lot different than the other kings, particularly the Elven kings, and he was actually a lot closer to the human or dwarvish kings, um, which I feel like I should say that there are four races in the beginning and the first age. There are just elves, humans, dwarves, and halflings, kind of like hobbits. Um, and halflings would not do any war. Dwarves were really good at war, but they chose not to step into it. Humans loved it. That was their thing. They got into a bunch of wars for no reason. And then they had elves, and elves were not particularly fighters, but they were pretty good at it. And all the kings or anyone in a leadership position that was an elf would typically avoid going into battle. They had people to do that for them. So they had armies, and they would just take whoever was in charge and go fight the war instead of us because we have to do a bunch of other things. They were more of like artistically renowned kings. So it makes Thalman a lot different because he was of the six, the warrior king. Now, in the first stage, year 57 to 60, the races got into a war over a plot of land that belonged to Thalman. It was these orchards, and it was two like towns that were there, and they ended up spanning 3 years of a war, and at the end he passed away, and that was kind of the turning point. And so they moved off of those lands, and those lands went to a human king named Vigo Henmar, and Thalmund's son, his only child, Aelrindel, would become king. And Aelrindel he was born in 41, so he could only have been less than 20, 19 when his dad died, probably. So he was not particularly fit to be king, but became king anyways, because no one expected anyone, like any person of leadership, to die on the elf side. But Thalmund went into battle anyways. So there was that. And the funny part about this is that where it is written, like the time that this is written, is in the Second Age, almost 3,000 years. So 6,500, 400 years later from this point. And we are dealing with Aelrindel and his two children, his son and daughter, which, let me look up their names real quick. His son was Aranhad, and his daughter was Morwen? Yeah. So I like Elrindel a lot because he goes absolutely insane when the protagonists like reach him. Because to explain a bit of the world, this might be so there's two sides. There is like this protected land of lush greenery where the elves live. Well, they moved to it, and then some dwarves had lived there. Like all the dwarves went there, but now all the dwarves were banished, and they don't live there anymore. So there's that, and then there's the rest of the world, which is a snowy nightmare, and the snow started when the gods at the end of the First Age, so after 3,500 years, were like, we don't like how brutal our creations are, and just tried to kill them off while being the most cruel. So they had made creatures, and they'd cover the world in snow, and there was not a lot of things anyone could do about it. And instead of anyone deciding to work together to figure the problems, the only people who did was one of the four deviants, which are like, it's a human, elf, dwarf, and halfling who are like super magical. One of them got together, like a group of dwarves, a halfling, and an elf, and they're like, okay, so we're gonna figure this out, and hopefully together we can rally all our people to use our magic to at least lift off the snow. And they succeed, partly. They get the Elven deviant to agree. I think her name was Biffine. Yeah, Biffine agreed. She was all for it. All the elves agreed. All the dwarves agreed, but the dwarven deviant did not. And that was, I can't remember who he was. I think Lycerin, I think. He ended up not going with the rest of his people, and then he tried to sneak in later and died because there was good defenses, and the human deviant, Valdemar, I believe his name is, wanted to get the humans, but the humans were too stubborn, and then the halflings altogether just didn't care, and it was only like the one halfling that was brought along that was like, no, we maybe should not live in the snow forever, and eventually we meet back up with Arundel, as he is one of the few kings of the elves still remaining that hasn't been wiped out. So when the protagonists go into those lands to try to get their space back, because there's a bunch of dwarves that want their kingdom back, they end up getting kidnapped by him after Aranhad, Arendel's son, is like, no, don't go down there. The forest is sick. You shouldn't go there. Trying to be like, my dad's gonna kidnap you. He literally kicks me out of the kingdom for no reason. And then it exactly happens. They get kidnapped, and Aranhad like saves them. So, long story short, Thalmund, not important to the plot. My favorite historical figure that I've written about for this world's lore, not important at all in the the part that I'm writing, which is very funny to me. Why why I drew him, I don't know why I did. Um, who can say? Hopefully, though, I can do more for our protagonists. I've been kind of worried about like having any design for them and setting that in stone because like with one character in particular, their appearance is so subject to change that I had given them a very set appearance, and I was like, "This is perfect. This will work really well." And then I drew it, and I was like, "That's ugly," and I had to change it. Um, and I spent like 3 hours trying to draw a whole new appearance while still keeping like the details that I wanted. Anyway, this is I hope to talk about this more because I really, really like this world that I've built. However, it's a lot of content. I mean, that's one of the things that I've always been kind of put off about with high fantasy is that it's a lot. It's so much. And like you can always observe certain portions of it, but you're never going to fully understand. Like I love the Lord of the Rings movies. I just finished Return of the King um like 2 days ago, I think, when I'm recording this. So 3 or 4 days after this before this gets posted. And there are so many references to things that happen in the history that I have to either Google or I'm just not gonna know because it's endless. There's so many things. Like I think there's so many references to and I might be pronouncing this wrong, Similarian, and I have yet to scratch the surface of that book. So, who knows? Uh, and I feel like the same goes for a lot of high fantasy. You can absorb a little bit and then it's a wormhole of a bunch of information that is cool but uninteresting, or you have to do homework to feel like you understand. So I understand that writing my own is fun, but there's a lot of information in there. So I feel kind of bad by talking about it because I just want to explain, yeah, here's Thalmund. He's cool. He's not plot important. However, here's all this other information that you probably didn't need to know about. Like the fact that his wife dies of grief afterwards. She doesn't, stop to raise her son. I mean, he's kind of age. Actually, I don't think so. I think he's younger than of age. I think he's still considered like really young for an elf. Uh, but she just dies and leaves him the throne, which is really confusing because it's like he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't, and even when he's you know, 6,000 years old, sitting on the throne still, he kind of still doesn't know what he's doing. But that's a whole nother point. Um, or little details that I've written for it. Like, I was really interested with how high fantasy has particular, like, racial feats and stuff like that. How you could have, oh, well, these, races are supposed to be between this height and have this, skin tone and all that. It's like, yeah, I wrote all that information. I've also written, age ranges, the oldest, the tallest, the shortest. I wrote qualities for what makes people most attractive of each race. Like, for example, dwarvish women, if they have red hair, that's attractive. Dwarvish men, though, if they have, let's see, it's dark eyes, light hair, and if they have a hobby, that's what makes dwarvish men attractive. But then you get to, like, halflings, and it's like, if a woman shuts up, that's hot, which, yeah, I know that's an issue. I know it's problematic. That's kind of the point, is that their culture is not 100% good, and one of the few halflings we do meet is an outsider. Actually, I really like her. I can't remember her name, but she works for the human king of the kingdom that we spend the most time in, which I'm not going to remember any of these names at the moment. And she is heavily political and motivated. And while that's really cool for her, completely considered unattractive for a halfling. The more you know. At least for my universe. So if any of this is interesting, or if I feel the need to do more of these, then I'll probably do. I was gonna do a deep dive into the Pantheon and do designs for that, but I'm also a little bit frightened by that because there are 12 gods, and not that they're not cool or I couldn't split up into a bunch of little parts. I have very complex designs for how I want them that I don't know how I would draw that right now in my style. And I don't have the money to get someone to draw them. Alright, I'm gonna go. Thanks for stopping by this week. I know this was a bit of a ramble tangent. I came in only knowing here was the information I wanted to talk about. I haven't scripted this. I put, in fact, all my energy this week into doing another video, which should be up soon. Which means I also have to record the audio for that one right after this. So, whoo. Thanks for stopping by. Very nice of you. I'll see you next week, hopefully. I almost didn't make it this week. Bye.